We are going to have, I think, the most insightful 1 hour as book clubbers. I know we have some visitors online, so you're welcome. My name is Claire Kumakej, and I'll be hosting you today. I'll be leading the book review today, and I'd like to welcome Winnie. I'll be working together with Winnie, and Primera will be in the background, helping us, cheering us on, but of course, interacting with you on the chat. So you're welcome. Winnie, can you say hello before we start?
Hello, everyone. Hello, Claire. While you think you'll be with me, I'll also just be here cheering you on. I'll contribute as much as I can.
Okay. All right. Today we are reviewing a very a different book from the books that we have reviewed in the past. And the title of this book is Women and Leadership. I have the blue version, but it's Women and Leadership, written by Gillard and Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. Been practicing that for a week, but there are a number of reasons as to why we chose this book. The first, of course, it was a recommendation. We have to thank Diana Nsimba, our lead, Project Girls for Girls lead. She recommended this book because she felt that through this book we'll be able to read from the different examples of powerful women, powerful not at the Ugandan level, powerful in different sectors on the political scene and on the country, at the country level, in terms of the global level. So she felt that this book would be able to challenge us as girls and women in Project Girls for Girls to stretch out, to seek places in office, and to learn from their stories. So this book has two parts. One part is based on the 8 women who were interviewed for this book, and then the second part is based on the different, I think there are 9 hypotheses about women in leadership. So today we are going to just look at some of the key. So we are not going to go woman by woman, though it was written like that. So we are going to look, we're going to read from the back, coming to the front. We're going to look at some of the key things that we learned from this book, first from the authors, and then we shall look at the different statements that were made about this book. So in order for us to understand look at the authors, these 2 women are amazing women in their own capacity. Julia regards herself as a feminist. She has been fighting for women's rights, for voices of women, both in her own country and on the world scene now. She's a former Prime Minister of Australia. And the second author, Ngozi, most of you know her. She was the longest serving finance minister in Nigeria, and currently the Director General of the World Trade Organization. And both of them, of course, had milestones. One of them is Ngozi was the first African to hold that office. as a Director General of the World Trade Organization. And many of the women, the 8 women that you're going to look at, also have many fasts. So you find that through their stories, we are going to be able to learn and see what it takes to be a leader. Now, in Girls for Girls, we of course exist to encourage everyone to go into leadership. And this book gives us a reason as to why we should go into leadership. Now, at the beginning of this book, they talk about the importance, why they wrote this book. One of the reasons they wrote this book is that the numbers were not adding up. The numbers are not adding up. Yes, we have made a lot of progress as women in leadership, but you find that there are many areas that are lacking. One of the first chapters was, of course, the numbers. Yeah, the numbers are not adding up. Why? When you look at statistics, there were around, I think, 10 pages that were talking about the statistics. And what is worrying is that when the top leaders in the world meet, they're predominantly men. And why is that an issue? Because all the issues they're discussing could be climate change, could be fertility, could be education, whatever they discuss, unless women are on the table, it's going to affect funding, it's going to affect the amount of attention that is given to such issues. And some of the issues that are of concern were sexual violence. If women are not on the table and such topics come up, they're not given the voice and the spotlight they need. Early marriages, human trafficking, honor killing. Honor killing happens mostly in the Asian countries, and then reproductive rights, and etc. Now, when these topics come up, unless women are on the table, they are not given emphasis, they are not given the priority that they need. And that's the basis of this book. We are going to look at the numbers. One of the things that stood out says, yes, we've made progress, but if you look at some of the numbers, for example, in the Oscars, all of us like entertainment. And in the history of the Oscars, for example, there are 93 men who have received Oscars as best directors. And only one, Catherine, is the only one who has won as best director. Now, is that equality? If you look at the Nobel Prize winners over the years, they have been 900 in total, and only 53 women have received the Nobel Prize, have been given the Nobel Prize. Is that equality? So there is a lot that we need to consider when dealing with the issue of sexism, dealing with the issue of the numbers, even with the progress made in terms of equality, especially in the political space. You find that in this book, they say that after, even in our own lifetime, equality may not be achieved until you and I are able to make changes, make decisions, and lift our voices. Now, when you look at one of the women that were interviewed, it's called Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. She was the president of Liberia between 2006 to 2018. She was the first woman president of Liberia, and first president in Africa, woman president in Africa. Now, when you look at her story comes first, but when you look at her story, it's a story of courage to speak out. And we're going to look at just maybe one trait from each of the leaders, and then we'll be able to discuss why it's important. From the story of Ellen Johnson, It's about courage. Many times we want to be leaders, but we don't want to pay the price. We want to be leaders, but we want to be silent. We want to be silent in the boardrooms. We want to be silent when the major decisions are being made in our corporate spaces, even in our own departments. Many times we keep quiet. While I was reading Ellen's story, I found that she never kept quiet. Many times she was threatened. Actually, it's 4 times she was threatened with jail. Yeah. We want to follow their examples, but we are not willing to raise our voices. Winnie, what are some of the issues that we are silent about in our workplaces? Maybe you can discuss that from the example of Ellen.
Okay, thank you, Claire. On the aspect of being silent, I think it comes out through the book that as women, we don't want to come up as aggressive, as vocal, as masculine. So we try to find the balance between the leadership that we aspire for and the other aspect of us as women. And unfortunately, it's also the expectation of those around us or of the people that we work with. They will expect that as a woman, much as you're aspiring to be in leadership, you're still supposed to be empathetic and caring, so not come out too strong, and an attribute that is really associated to men. So maybe this difficult balance is what keeps women in our spaces quiet and silent and not wanting to come out as too vocal. Yeah. But also on what also keeps us silent, you mention, or maybe not yet, but also the price that you may have to pay for speaking up. The examples you have given, these women have been through jail, they've been ridiculed. I mean, for many of us, you think about your children, yeah? And that price of being in jail is such a high price to pay. So you feel, I would rather not venture. Let me concentrate on raising my children. So for most of these ladies, you see that they are committed to doing what they are doing. They are committed to airing out their opinions. And for many of us, I think that's the bravery that we lack, that come what may, I'm going to stand up for this, I'm going to speak about this, and no matter what it takes, this is my voice and this is my opinion. I think that's where many of us fall short, and I don't know what is the solution around that, because also the book says there's no right way to be a woman leader. Your style of leadership is precisely uniquely to you. So in the end, Claire, as we discuss with the ladies, I hope it will come out, those key takeaways. So while at the same time, there are things that we might aspire for, at the same time, there's no unique way to be a woman leader. So where do we strike the balance between those things that we aspire for, safe spaces, and the requirement to come out and be strong? It's a difficult balance, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Winnie. One of the examples that stood out for me of adversity is when the president, Samuel Doe, executed the president at the time, and actually executed another 13 of the cabinet members. Now, Ellen was one of the survivors. There were only 4 ministers that survived execution. And the reason as to why she survived is because President Doe said that it's because the mother had given him water, drinking water at one point, and the mother to this day does not remember that. So I found it very interesting. But it's about the courage to speak out about real issues. We have issues in our communities that we need to speak about. The inequalities in our offices. There's a lot of sexism in our workplaces. And through her example, as she concludes, she says that we need to raise our voices. And the reason as to why she was able to hold on during the Civil War, it was because there were a number of incredible women. On page 52, it talks about many women who stood up, who played a role in bringing peace and supporting each other. So as women, we need to stand together. Yes, we see Ellen as the one standing out in this particular example, but she acknowledges the support of women who were able to stand when she was in exile, when she was in jail. They were able to stand and for the cause during the Civil War. So she later became the elected president in 2003, and she was again re-elected in 2011. So here they talk about her as someone who would not be silenced. So from her example, we learn courage. Without courage, we can't be leaders. We'll struggle because decisions have to be made. And then you need to have the ability to stand. And so when you look at one of we're going to see some of the hypotheses at the second part of this book. And the second example is Michelle. Michelle, I'm talking about the 8 women, because out of their stories comes out another trait that as leaders we need to adopt. The second woman is Michelle Bachelet. She was the president of Chile in 2006 to 2010, and also from 2014 to 2018. She was the first and only woman to be elected as president in Chile, and she was the first head of UN Women from 2010. Her story is a bit different from that of Elaine, but one of the things that is different is that in her personality, she's very different from Elaine. For her, she was a bit withdrawn and a bit soft. So here they describe her as very soft-spoken. She was very soft-spoken, and she gave an impression of warmth, of kindness, or an open face. And she had a different career path. She was supposed to be a doctor. She was actually a doctor, and she trained as a doctor. So from her example, we are going to learn a number of things. One is career change. She was able to enter into politics, which she considered a mistake at one point, because when she was offered the job, she just accepted. And on page 63, I underlined this so I could read it. It says that the president at that time called her and asked her to join the government. I didn't ask how much my pay will be. I don't ask what social security protection I'll have. I don't ask anything except, do people work as a team? Of course, they said, yes, absolutely. And like a tweet, I believe them. So I pack up my bag and go. She believed in taking any opportunity that is given to her. And as a doctor, she had no place in politics. But because she had been chosen, she had been in in different roles, leadership roles. She was chosen by the president to join politics. What do we learn from her example? It's about seizing the opportunity. It's about seizing the opportunity. And she felt that the challenges in the health sector would only be handled by people who understood medicine, people who understood the actual challenges. And you find that to this day, Chile produces the best medical people in the world. And she talks about mentorship. She talks about the two people who were mentors. And on page 63, she talks about luck and how she was lucky to meet Baker, Willis Baker. He was, just hold on, please, sorry. She talks about the different mentors that she had at that time. As in Girls for Girls, we put a lot of emphasis on mentorship. But as women, we struggle to mentor. Many times calling out for mentors, and most of us don't want to go into mentorship. Why? It's because it needs sacrifice. Someone has to be intentional about lifting someone else up. And so we find that mentorship throughout the book is very, very key. These women did not rise up on their own. Someone was holding their hand, someone was leading them on. And so we are encouraged in this book that we need to look out for mentors. But also, if given an opportunity and you're in leadership, mentor someone else. If we are to solve some of the issues that Winnie talked about at the beginning, does this book have the answers? It has the answers, and the answers lie with us. If you're given a voice, use it. Have the courage to use it. In other chapters, you're going to find that a number of issues come up. One of the issues that she struggled with was work-life balance. On chapter 57, it talks about her busy life. She was a health professional, a political campaigner, a mother of 3, including a young child under the age of 10. But somehow she found room. How did she balance? Throughout the story, you find that there was sacrifice. There was sacrifice. And at the end of the book, they give us some tips on how to create that balance. You find that in some of the examples, around 4 of the ladies had issues with their marriages. Ellen was in leadership, but she was being harassed, beaten by her husband until she had to make a decision to leave. And you find that the example is that same thing happens to many of the other women. So work-life balance, how does she balance and how can we do it? When you look at her story, she says she had a central value system. She knew why she was in every space that she was in. If we have that kind of clarity, we'll be able to create the balance in our lives. Later, she was invited to be the Minister of Defense. Now, being a Minister of Health is very different from being a Minister of Defense for a country like Chile. At least from the movies, you find that it's a country that has a number of issues. So in terms of poverty, in terms of drugs, in terms of the many things that needed a very powerful leader to carry them on, to carry them through. So one of the issues was that she was bold enough to overcome even her feminine voice. She was able to overcome her feminine voice in order to stand strong in the room of many men. And one of the questions on 58 was very interesting. They asked her, when leaders of her party came to see her, they asked her, what do you want, Michelle? What do you want to do, Michelle? And she said, I want to walk by the sea, hand in hand with a man I love. And they were all like, what is she talking about? This was an important meeting. And she said, that's what I would like. But if you're asking me to be a candidate, that is something else. I'm available, but it's not what I want. So one of the things that she mentions here is that you need to have clarity of exactly what you want. Many times we are asked in our offices, how much, what pay would make you happy? What would you want to do? In 5 years, what would you want to do? And many people do not have the answers. And when you don't have that definite answer about what you want, you fall for anything. You take on any job. You take on any job, even one that is against your values. So what we learn from Michelle is know what you want. Yes, take the office, be in office, but have a value system. Yeah, have a value system. And that is one of the things that stood out for me. Winnie, do you have any addition before we move on to another?
Yes. For me, the big issue for me in that part of the book is where she said she always questioned whether she had made the right decision. And it was really a wake-up call. And I felt, okay, it's not surprising that sometimes you will doubt if what you are doing is actually the right thing, or if you have made the right decision. But as you say, Claire, if you want to do it, go ahead and do it. And those doubts will always be there. Did I make the right decision? Was this actually what was good for me? I wanted to walk at the beach with the man that I love and see where I've gotten myself into. This is not what I would have loved to do, but she had the calling to lead, and she took it despite all the questions that she had later if she made the right decision. So that was my biggest takeaway, to know that those doubts will always be there. But if you want to lead, just take the mantle and lead. And in the book, it says that there is nothing wrong with a proud declaration that you are aiming for the top, that you have what it takes, that you are ready to be a great leader. If that is what you feel, you may choose to plainly state it. So you also mentioned the issue of clarity. I think that is very key. If it's clear to us that we want to be leaders, then no matter the doubts that we have in our heads, I think it is important that we follow that path, because it's clear to us that this is what we want. But it also says in the book that, but we know that those words where we come out and said, this is what I want, this is what I'm going for, this is what I would like to be, we need to know that those words will be weighed differently coming from a woman than they would be if they were coming from a man, and that this is a decision with consequences. So these stereotypes, we are going to live with them. I think somewhere in the book, they say if we all rallied together behind the principles about supporting each other as women, and really women empowerment, it's going to take us another 94 years to get where we want to get. And that is if we all rally behind the same agenda. Imagine, that's a century. So we just have to be aware that if we want it, and we are willing to walk the journey, a journey that will have consequences. So that was really, for me, the big takeaway. It has consequences, but if you're clear on what you want, be ready for it. And no matter what it takes, just go for it.
Thank you, Winnie. If anyone has something to say, you can just raise up your hand and Primera will be able to unmute you and you make your contribution. Thank you. As we go along, you can have something that clicks, you can have an opinion. She'll be able to unmute you and you'll be able to speak. So the third lady that we are going to look at is Kristen Lagand. Kristen, I think Allen, Primera kindly unmute.
Hi, how are you?
Alan?
Hi, how are you? It's so nice being here. I can't even risk putting on my camera. I think I look like so dodgy. I just landed and I was so happy to find that you now have the book club at 7 p.m. So I was super excited because most times I'm flying at around in the afternoons. So hi everyone, I hope you're well. I'm really excited about the book and just hearing the conversations. Just this week, these are things we are discussing, you know, the second example of having those building alliances and having my sister's keepers. Most times we make mistakes as women. You've heard of gatekeepers and you've heard of, we get in and we assume the characteristics of patriarchy. So look at how it is when we go into a system. For instance, you're appointed into parliament. You become the member of parliament for women for the next 30 years without thinking, why don't I bring other women forward? What we learn and from these women is the most important thing is surround yourself with people. First of all, have your mentors, but also have people, groom people. The moment you stand out alone, it's easy to be assassinated. You can only go for so long as saying, oh, I was the first African, I was the first Black woman, I was the first this to be in there. Bring along other people. Because one thing I have seen, as far as the higher you go, it's so easy, we call it being assassinated or silenced, because you stand out. And so it's so important that we get people to surround ourselves with. I've seen it for successful women, you'll always see they have people with them. We sort of have to learn those things that the men do. I always give the example of Bobby Wine. Those guys around Bobby Wine will die for him. Edim Motwe, and who they will die for him, you know. If you look at yourself as a female leader, who do you have that can lay their lives there for you? Who do you have that can stand up in the boardroom and say, no, what Alan has said, I agree, let's go for it. So it's a very good point for us to note. How do we build those circles around us that support us? How do we get those mentors that speak for us, that put our name in the spaces where we are not and put us in the space? Then Winnie raised something about how do you ensure you speak out? I thought I would say it because I've seen it as well. I've been working now 25 years plus, and I can see my sister Sylvia is also here. One of the things I have learned, be consistent, be authentic, be consistent. The moment people say, hey, Alan spoke on this, but now she hasn't spoken, you know, they start realizing that, is she being selfish? Does she just fight for herself? Does she only look out for herself? Remember the thing we try to do on advocacy, negotiating for yourself and others. Session 4 is very important about, don't just speak for yourself. When you're there, also use that platform to speak for others, but do it consistently. Today, don't speak, then you keep quiet, then you know, people watch and see. People are always watching. Not when you're in that spotlight, people are watching to see how you're going to behave. So I thought I would emphasize those two things. Winnie, if we are authentic, people know Winnie is like that. Winnie, that's Winnie. You know, they won't keep asking, is this Winnie of today, Winnie of tomorrow? When you're authentic and when you're consistent, people will always know where you stand on matters. Even you don't need to speak, they'll say, as we're taking this decision, just know that Alan is going to come back and challenge it. Yeah.
Very nice. Yeah. Thank you.
All right then.
Thank you,
I'm here listening, but hopefully, let me say, I can just say hi because I just I just landed. I'm looking really dodgy, but all the best. I love this.
You look very nice.
Thank you. It's really good to be back in the space, and I hope we can get the authors to join us at the next session.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you so much for joining us. Alan was helping us to get in touch with the authors. When we get a response, we shall be able to have them a special session with them. Agnes, you can speak. Primera, kindly unmute Agnes.
Hi, ladies. Thank you, ladies,
Hello,
for this book. I just wanted to say something. As Winnie was talking about the issue of women waiting to be, okay, not waiting to be called upon, but the lady who was called upon to go to join politics and she took on the opportunity. I thought about something else. I was talking this week. I had an engagement with our Minister of Gender and Labor, and our statistics alone are very appalling. She was telling me that when you look at the ladies in parliament today in Uganda, who are there because of affirmative action, yeah, the 146 seats that are reserved for women. And she was like, almost 80% of those women are there simply because they are someone's husband, they are from someone's family, and they were pushed, and the men were like forced for them to be voted. And it brought me, it related so well with what we were reading to say, okay, yes, someone has called you to the party, but what are you doing with that seat? And it kind of remains a challenge for us here in our country. So I thought I would share that here because it resonated so well with what I was reading in the book. Thank you.
Thank you, Agnes. When you look at the statistics, the global statistics, they're very, very, very alarming. Actually, I kept writing them down and I was surprised, but I realized that even at our own level here in Uganda, we are not yet there. We're a long way from there. And I would like to agree with Alan. In one of the chapters, they talk about wanting to be in this space alone. There's scarcity. These are the mentality that for every board, unless it's in their policy, we have to be only a few women. Otherwise, other women are going to outshine me. And that issue is not there with the men. So we need to be able to make decisions and be intentional about helping other women rise, and also using our voice and our space and the position that we are in for the good of other women. So one of the first hypothesis was you go girl, and we've handled a number of issues that were raised in the first in that first hypothesis. And one of them was courage. We've looked at courage. We have talked about having the strength to stand, having taking up opportunities. This book is not about sharing stories that are going to scare women away from leadership, but to encourage them. And on page 109, it says, if people discriminate against you because you are Black, or because you're a woman, or both, remember it is their problem and not yours. Use their problem as a source of strength and motivation to do better, not as a source of weakness. So if you're discriminated upon in your office, in the different spaces that we're in, you need to use that as your strength. And then it says, one key to enabling a woman to become a leader is a childhood in which she's taught she's not lesser than boys, and to aim high. I found the first hypothesis very, very important, because most of the leaders that were profiled in this book, you find that the interest came from childhood. The interest to be leaders started at 12 years, 13, and if there are parents on this call, we need to be careful about what we tell our children. If, for example, a child wants to debate, do you encourage? There's a trait that is that you can nurture. If someone wants to be a prefect, do you tell them concentrate on your studies, don't go for campaigns? There's something that is burning in them. And from these examples, I learned that we need to be careful about the language that we use with with our children. On page 114, Ellen says, I thought I would do anything. I could play any game like a boy. I could stand up in class to any teacher, woman or man, and I was taught to do just that. Now, we may find that by pushing and ignoring and discouraging our children from being leaders and taking up responsibility may be a disadvantage in the future. And in that first hypothesis, they're encouraging that you go girl. And it's not only for us at our ages, but we are stewards of the young children. So looking at the examples and seeing people being nurtured from a young age to be leaders. At one point, they called it prophecy. There's an uncle who prophesied that I see a president in this child. And so on page 115 says, from early on, because my parents were engaged in all sorts of activities, I was brought up as someone who was responsible for others. And that one of the attributes of leadership, you have to take risks and assume responsibility. And that was at a young age. Winnie, how can we, maybe you can share about this, how can we nurture responsibility to our children?
Okay, that was a very interesting section for me as well. It points to what I think I have a bias, and I've just seen it with my own children. I have two girls and I have a boy. But I guess because of what is behind me, that you have to push the girl child, I end up assigning most of the responsibilities to the girls. And there is the risk that the girls become more responsible than the boy who is less assigned responsibility. So reading that today and seeing that most of these ladies were nurtured as children, that they were assigned responsibility as early as that, for me, it was really eye-opening to see. And there's always the question, leaders are born, not made, and then the debate continues. But I think what it tells us today is that we are also responsible for nurturing leadership in our children by the simplest thing as assigning responsibility in the home, by assigning them to take care of things. The example was from one of the ladies who said because the parents were busy, they made her responsible for so much around the house, and that had nurtured the spirit of leadership and responsibility in her. So this is what we take. If we ourselves do not have it, at least let's do it for our children. Let's build them up as leaders by giving them more and more responsibility within the home. That was my biggest takeaway from the section on You Go Girl.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Winnie. The last quote in that section about responsibility. Responsibility is what has led me my whole life. A lot of decisions that I have made in my life have been for love, but also because of responsibility. So responsibility is one of the things that we should encourage. Sometimes we pamper our children to the extreme. When I was reading this, I was a bit guilty. I have 2 boys and 2 girls, and they are teenagers and preteens. But from this book, I learned that I need to be able to give them more responsibility, not to shield them, because this is one of the things that can help in the future. So it was a learning for me. And as a concluding remark for that section, they say, with these additions, You Go Girl is definitely a proven hypothesis and a real lesson for the parents and relatives of young girls. A family that creates the kind of free from gender limits environment our women leaders grew up in, which will be willing Sorry about that.
We've lost you, Claire.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm using a hotspot. I'm sorry about that. So we'll go to the second hypothesis. And I don't know whether Winnie, would you take us through that? Or I can continue.
Please continue, Claire. Be in the lead. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now the second hypothesis is just hold on. It's all about the hair. I don't know whether Alan would say something about that, because I've heard her talking about Hillary Clinton and how the hair was such a big deal for her campaign. And in this book, because she's one of the women they interviewed, the hair was a big deal. So one of the hypotheses is it's all about the hair. And the hypothesis is women leaders end up losing valuable time on matters related to their appearance. Is appearance a key issue in leadership? Yeah, is it a key issue in leadership? Now, when they interviewed these women, they say that appearance has historically been and continues to be the basis on which women are judged. So we cannot change the stereotypes of the opinions of media, the opinions of members of parliament, people in cabinet, in movies, in the different corridors. So we find that women have been forced to pay attention to how what they wear and what they do. I think in our own circle, we'll see that our new speaker has really upped her game in terms of appearance. She really dresses the part. Is that important? While men dress up in black suits and no one pays attention, is it important? So they give an example of Barack Obama, who always wore black or navy blue suits or charcoal gray. And there was a time he actually wore something much lighter, and beige. No one remembers beige. No one remembers what he. Alan says it was a famous brown suit. No one remembers what he said, but everyone remembers what he wore, because it was different from what he normally wore. So for women, they advise that without paying so much attention to your appearance and what you wear, it's important to be consistent. People get used to your image. So in leadership here, at least it's talking about political leadership, we need to maintain a certain kind of standard in terms of grooming and in terms of our style. So Winnie, do you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, and that was a very strange section, because I thought there was a way out, but it looks like there is really no way out for us as women, that we really need to look after the hair and look after the dressing. It's really unfortunate, but I think it's one of those things that we have to deal with. We will always be looked at differently when it comes to that. But the book also offers some advice to us as women. For example, if you're the lady who is in the media, be the one who changes the discussion and says it's not about her clothing. I think that's the role that we can play as women for each other. And what Alan was talking about, speaking out and being consistent when we speak out. So then let it not be, this is someone I know, or this is someone I don't know. As long as we decide to look out for fellow women, if the subject comes and the focus is on how the Prime Minister is dressed, we have an agenda, and we will have to call out others and say, it's not about her dress, it's not about her hair. This is, I think, work that we have on our hands, but I wear dreadlocks. My sister, for example, never wear dreadlocks because she wants to look good and she can't have the same look all the time. So it's really unfortunate that as women, these things really matter and we have to live with them. But let's hold each other's hands. Let's stand up for our sisters and keep honing the fact that it's not about her hair, it's not about her dressing. I think that's the best we can do for each other. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Winnie. And as a concluding remark on that, on page 152, on social media, we can all push back when a vicious viral cycle starts about a woman leader's appearance. We can all go deep inside and ask ourselves, am I really opening myself up to receive a woman leader as a whole person and evaluating her accordingly? Or am I judging the hairstyle, the jacket, and the shoes? Here they advise us to train ourselves to judge a leader by what they say and do, not what they look like. So I think that really addresses the issue. We should be able to change the conversation. We should be able to change the narrative wherever we are involved. If it's in social media and someone is commenting about the appearance of another fellow woman, we need to be able to call it out and stop it at that point. Then the third hypothesis is skrill or soft, the style conundrum. Now, skrill is about, I had to actually find the definition of skrill. It's about making a sharp pitched voice. Do you actually change your style for the sake of leadership? Do you try to be strong? Yeah, to be strong in instances where you're supposed to be strong. So they give examples of some of the leaders who had to make speeches, for example, after a terrorism attack. How is a woman leader supposed to address a nation in that case? And it's very different from men, because when in such a scenario, when a man cries or sheds a tear or wipes his eyes, it's heroic. He has connected with the people. He has felt the pain of what's going on. But when a woman sheds a tear during tough speeches or during some of those challenging times, it's called weakness. She cannot handle. She's not strong enough. So how do you create the balance? Do you change your character? Do you skrill or do you become soft? So here they give a number of examples and how they handled difficult situations. On page 170, it talks about how, it gives an example of Teresa when she was supposed to speak after the terrorist attacks. She was a Home Secretary at that time, and she was supposed to make a decision. Here they say, when we had terrorist attacks, you had to show strength. So people felt that somebody is actually gripping the situation and knows what to do. People can feel safe and secure under that. But on the other hand, they want you to show empathy and sympathy naturally enough for the victims. And you need to get the balance right so that you can show that natural concern that you have for the victims, but at the same time show you've got the strength to be able to take the country through. So these ladies are sharing some of the difficult situations where they had to go out of character, out of character for a greater cause. So men don't have that issue, but women do, because if you cry on camera, if you're a boss and you show emotion, how is it treated? Here, they advise that when people reject me and are dismissive because I'm a woman, I say, sort of, I'm not working with you. If you don't like me because I'm a woman, or you won't work in partnership with me because I'm a woman, I'm off. I will find better. So in this chapter, they advise us that you don't have to be soft, or you don't have to squeal in order for you to be a good leader. You just need to be authentic. You just need to step up and have the emotional intelligence to study the room. Will emotion work? Will you actually express yourself? We've seen a number of leaders show emotion when a tragedy happens in their country. Is it a sign of weakness? So as women, we are forced to act tough. When sad things happen, you act tough because you think that at that time you'll be seen as a leader. So we need to be able, here they advise that we need to be able to find a balance, but above all, have genuine concern and compassion in terms of trouble. And the fourth hypothesis was very, very interesting. It says she's a bit of a beach. She's a bit of a beach. That is page 174. Now, I think many of us have said this or thought it about our bosses, where in some instances, you feel that they're overbearing, they do not understand. And the hypothesis here is that as a result of unconscious bias, it is generally assumed that women with power are unlikable, or in the vernacular, bitchy. Researchers want to find out, are leaders bitchy? Winnie, can you say something about that? Winnie, can you unmute? I think you're still muted.
Yes, I just said that I'll leave that. I'll open that up to the audience and hear if anybody has an experience on that one.
Okay, maybe when I read this quote, it throws some light there. On page 189, it says we should just be able to be who we are, regardless of whether it's considered likable or not. We have to start trying. We have to start trying to demonstrate different traits, leadership traits, and show that they can be accepted as a norm. We have to be willing to break the mold and show that you could survive by being your own person. So many times we feel that we need, when you look at the different examples, most of these women were surrounded by men, either in cabinets or in the current offices that they hold. They try, some of the mistakes they've made were try to sound like men, try to act like men. When you think about leadership, even in our own space, if you're asked to define some of the norms of a leader, the traits of a leader, you'll find that things like strength, aggressiveness, assertiveness, these traits that we've read in books create a sort of a template that you're supposed to fit in. But we are all different characters. All the women who are on this call are very different in character. Some are soft, some are loud, some are really hyper, some are not. But you're called to be leaders in different spaces. Do you try to fit in the listed traits, the academic traits of leadership? In this book, they say, no, you have to just be yourself. Yeah, be yourself and do the task at hand. You don't have to be a bitch to be a leader. And hypothesis 5, who is minding the kids? who is minding the kids? When you look at with different women we read about in this book, they struggled with work-life balance. I remember this year in March, Women's Day, many people wanted, they had the theme and they wanted us to discuss work-life balance. How do you create it? The opening quote for this section is, I believe you can be both empathetic and strong, that you can be a leader and also kind. I always thought that the notion of mother of the nation also has that same implication. So there are many women, for example, who are choosing not to have children for the sake of their careers. There are many women, like in this example, the women who chose to leave their children behind in order to go into exile because of the risks they had taken in the political space. There are some who left the responsibility to men, and some paid a high price. Now, the first hypothesis here is having children and being a leader plays out differently for men than it does for women. Now, do men also struggle with work-life balance? Do they think about who is watching the children when they are making a decision for a job? So this seems to be, according to this book, it seems to be a woman's problem. It's something that we need to address as women. And one of the tips they give for work-life balance is that from the onset, we need to be able to have these discussions with the men or the husbands or the partners in our lives, if there are children that are involved, before the job comes, that discussion must be had. For example, when you have to go for further studies, do you have that discussion when the letter is before you of admission, or you can have that discussion before? So while reading this, I learned a number of things from the quotes and the statements that the women made. They said, I tried to create, this is Kristen, she says, I tried to balance, and of course it's not a balance because my children believe I left them alone too much because of my choices, but we had a good relationship. So there is no mold for everyone. There's no answer. All our family situations are very different. So many times people want to hear the answer. Tell me how you balance. Tell me how you balance. It's hard to balance. It's hard to balance. But here they tell us, have these conversations. Have these conversations before the job opportunity comes, before the career change, before the decisions are life and death. Who is watching the children? And then on the flip side, many of one of the issues that Ellen had was the battle that why doesn't this woman take care of her children instead of meddling in things that are not her business? So many times we feel like, why is this woman in the boardroom? Why is she spending so much time in politics and in other things, yet she should be at home cooking or doing other chores? So they give examples of different cultures, the African culture, of how women were not supposed to speak, how they are supposed to take care of their families. But of course, we've moved away from that. Right now, the challenges are both parties working and no one is watching the children. But from these women, you find that even in their busy schedules, they gave time to their kids. They gave time to their kids. When they were present, they were present. Now, that's a challenge that we have, that when we are present, we are not present. When we come home, we carry the office. When we come home, we carry the laptops home. So we are not present. So you find that no one is actually watching the children. So that is something, and I encourage all the women on this call, parents on this call, to go back and read that hypothesis and see how these women were able to try and create a balance. So when you're present, be present. And then number 6, a special place in hell. That statement was made by
There.
Yeah. Oh, you had something to say, Winnie?
Yes, on this part where we discussed she's a bitch, there is something that we might want to be more aware of as women. I think Hillary, it was discussed by Hillary, where many times some people are saying, there's something about her that I don't like. There's something. Then you really ask, but what exactly is it that you don't like? I don't know. It's just something. It's just something. And you hear that a lot. Huh? So she says that that's really a genuine response from people, but they don't really have the details. And it's just people having a problem and disliking women who are assertive and find them unlikable for the simple reason that they're assertive. So I think we need to be aware of that when we tend to say there's something and you can't really put a finger to it. Be aware that it's you probably not liking someone's assertiveness, and that's just your problem, nothing more. Yeah.
Thank you, Winnie. Number 6, hypothesis 6, a special place in hell. This was a statement that was made by Madeleine Albright. She was the US Secretary, the first female US Secretary of State. She was giving a speech, and she said, there's a special place in hell for women who don't support other women. Now, of course, when she made that statement, it was put on T-shirts, it was put on caps, on bumper stickers, but later she was able to explain that she wanted to show the extent, or to put the emphasis on why women, like Alan said, why women should be able to look out for others. So the hypothesis here was Madeleine right? How crowded is that place in hell going to be? Do women really support other women? Or is there a tendency for women to compete rather than to cohere? So here, the whole chapter is talking about women. Women must champion each other. I think this is a real backbone of Project Girls for Girls. Women must champion each other. This can be difficult for us. Women have been pitted against each other since the beginning of time for that one seat on the table. There seems to be scarcity, and it has been planted inside each of us. The scarcity is not our fault, but it is our problem. I think that is a key statement of that chapter. Scarcity is not our fault, but it is our problem. And as women, what are we going to do about it? So the men are actually, in this passage, you find that the men are actually using that against us. And we found that, I remember in the race for the Speaker of our own parliament, you find that the women were bickering more against each other, pulling each other down, and the men used it to their advantage, so that the female leader could be defeated. But this happens also in our offices. And what do? The book club is not about accumulating books, this is our 27th book review, but it's about making those decisions after you have read a book. what decision can you make? And here they tell us the things that you can do as a woman in this case. One is that every woman leader needs to make different choices. You need to start talking about gender. How often do you talk about gender in your conversations, in your decisions? How deliberate are you when it comes to gender? Do you wait for Women's Day and raise your voice about your rights? It has to be in our day-to-day conversation, according to what is written on page 232. Then the second is be a mentor. Be a mentor. You need to be able to help meet and manage the demands made on leaders to act as mentors. You need to be able to find the time to mentor. Yeah, to mentor. And if you're not in that position, you need to find a mentor by creating and aspiring mentees. Yeah, you will be able to address the issue of a special place in hell for women who do not support other women. And then it talks about having deeper discussions about the scarcity in your space. So one of the issues they talk about here is that as women, we need to acknowledge that scarcity is not our fault, but it is our problem, and we need to address it if we are to solve this problem. We also need to, the second thing is that we need to realize that we are not perfect. All women are not perfect, because here in this paragraph, they say, it's almost seems silly to have to say it. We have to remember that every woman in the world is a mix of strength and weaknesses. So you will not find a perfect woman. Our challenge is to support each other in a way that makes space for inevitable imperfections. And so we need to be, the last thing that they mentioned, the third one on page 233, don't block another woman. If you're not going to support, don't block another woman. And I think that is one of the things that we struggle with a lot. We block women. We, in the spaces where we are, whether you're in HR, you find that if men say, we can't employ a woman, she's going to get pregnant, she's young, and now she'll take, too many days of leave, then all the issues and the household issues and the drama, we can't hire her. As women, we need to be able to stop that kind of talk. Do not block another woman from progressing. Yeah. Then I think that is one of the issues. Then the last one, there's number 7, modern day Salem. Modern day Salem is Salem is a place in the US. I think it's in Massachusetts. Yeah, and in the earlier days, they actually went on a witch hunt. And many women, actually the numbers that were mentioned here were alarming. 25,000 women in Germany were executed because they were so-called witches. These are big numbers. In France, they killed 5,000. In Switzerland, 4,000. And the list goes on. Britain, 1,000. Many in Italy were killed because they were considered witches. Now, why is such a chapter in a book like this? We consider women as evil. We label women as witches. So I found it very interesting to have that kind of conversation where you expect women to be sent. Many of us in our corridors, when you're talking about our bosses, we say that woman is a witch. She's the worst woman. The female bosses are the worst. You're actually modern day Salem. You're having a witch hunt. And this kind of talk is what has led to the execution of many of people's careers, the things that we say, the perceptions that we have about our supervisors and our leaders. We have labeled them witches because they have tough decisions to make. Now, when you look at the economy now, many of the leaders have to make decisions of cutting numbers, reducing on the staff. And when a woman has to make that kind of decision, she's considered a witch. Now, many of the women in this book had the same kind of talk, but they advise us that no one is perfect and politicians are rarely saints. So male leaders actually do not suffer from this problem. There's a quote here that first, male leaders benefit from greater grace and forgiveness in the event of wrongdoing, whereas women are punished more harshly. Second, and in terms of political trouble, the language and imagery surrounding an embattled woman leader becomes more endangered. Women are most likely to be ensnared in legal proceedings rather than having scandals remain in the world of politics. So you find that a man can be caught, for example, in adultery, and it's brushed away. It's not headline. But a woman, if she commits that sin, it's grave. It's a grave sin. So these things follow, and they are not dependent on a country. They're not dependent on the career. You find that in different leadership circles, women, there's a lot of witch hunt. And here, the last comment is that, in conclusion, we may be living in modern day Salem, but it's too soon for us to be forgetting that history. So it means that we need to remember the consequences, that when you witch hunt verbally in office, when there's a mistake that is made and you make and you contribute as a woman, you are pulling down another woman if you contribute, whether on social media, whether in the different conversations. So we need to be aware of the history and the consequence of witch hunting. So hypothesis 8, and that is a role modeling.
Hello.
Role models. Hello.
Claire?
Yes, Winnie?
Claire, there is something we shouldn't miss about mentoring, because in this chapter also, while we emphasize mentoring, there is a different view. For example, Christine says that for her, what did it for her was not the traditional mentoring as we always talk about it, but she says the people that worked for her or that supported her in her office are people that she actually learned a lot from. And she also says it's not necessarily about identifying one role model the way it's presented many times, but she feels that you should be able to learn from different people. In her own words, she says, I don't think there is a single person who you should model your life after, or that you can learn just from the wisdom of one person. You can learn a bit here, learn a bit there. You can admire someone's abilities in one area, but not all. And then you can learn something else from someone else. And then she says, but of course, when it's a specific career, like for example, politics, you can identify someone who gives you guidance as you go along. But she also says that, for example, watching, this was Erna now, leaving Christine. Erna said as a teenager, there was a presenter on television who she always looked up to, and that was her role model, and saw her aspire to get into politics. So that's something I thought that we shouldn't miss out in terms of the way we talk about mentoring, because we've also, some people have found it difficult. Also, the mentors may not have actually time to look out for you. They say that if you're in the same office and you have a junior, you might pay attention to her, to see her through, see her rise. But when you're in different fields, feel free to look out to different people. I thought we should not miss that aspect of mentoring, that you can learn different things from different people, and there could be always be different sources of inspiration.
Thank you, Winnie. And
yes.
Just to add on to that, when we look at the examples of the women, you find that it's in some instances, or if not most, it's the men who open doors.
Exactly.
It's the men who handpicked them. It's the men who forwarded their names to be recognized, to be appointed into offices, and to actually mentor. When you look at, I think it was Ellen, or she talks about how the president at that time was coaching her and training her to be a president. And at that time she was a minister. And so you find that mentors are not limited to women. It could be a man mentoring you for the leadership role. But the key issue here, choose, like Winnie said, who are the role models? Who are the role models? Is your role model? I just wanted to pick her brain, and she said, "I think it's you." And I realized that these kids actually watch. They watch. So even in our own homes, are you a role model to your children, to the girls in your own space? Your daughters should be able to say, Agnes, that, Mom, you are my role model. Why? Because of this and that. So even in our own space, we need to be role models, but also as we conclude, you find that there's a quote here that exposure to women in leadership roles enables women and girls to see that the door is open. And that encourages them to step through it. If we do not, if we create this persona that you're born to be in that role, you're closing the door. But if we play the role of mentors, we encourage the young girls to dream big. We encourage them to actually step up. Yeah, they look, if they want to be in those shoes, there are courses they're supposed to do. There's a certain kind of resilience that they have to get in order to enter that office. But if our doors are closed, if we have a closed door policy and no one gets in there, you will not be able to mentor someone else. So we have learned a number of things from the many women that we've read about in this book. And I would encourage everyone, really, for those who have not finished the book, for those who have not read it, to pick it, because we have not looked at the individual examples, but from the lives of the different women, we find that there are certain traits that they learn, they share in the story. It's different from an academic book where you just read something that someone has crafted. These are real life experiences, the resilience, the persistence. You find that persistence is one of the greatest traits that they had a vision, about what they wanted to achieve, even at a young age, they were able to take that, and it created a burning desire for them to make a difference. I would want to give an example of Christine. She said at a very, very young age, she was sort of, her life was maybe middle income. She was from a well-to-do family, but one day she saw a young boy walking barefoot on a winter day. Now you can imagine in winter, and a child is walking barefoot. And from that time, she made a decision that she would do something about it when she grows up. So these things create a burning desire. When you look at these women, even like Hillary, they had a burning desire to make a difference in the lives of others. So from this book and the different books that we have read, we have learned that there has to be a cause. There has to be a cause. There has to be a cause that you choose to follow. What difference can you make? When these two ladies were reading, I was listening to their different podcasts about this book. And they were asking, why did you write this book? Why? And they said the reason as to why they wrote this book is because of the power of experience. It's actually the best teacher. So when you learn from the stories of other women, as we are encouraged in Girls for Girls, when you hear the stories of these women, there is something that is ignited in if you pay attention to the lessons and the things that they went through, the moments where they stood their ground, the moments where they gave in, the moments where they conceded defeat in political situations, the challenges, the small, like the family challenges that they were having. These stories are very, very uplifting and encouraging, and they're not unique. Women on this call, we all have our different stories. We need to be able to use our stories to transform lives. So I would like to thank all of you for joining us for this session. And maybe if anyone has the last remarks, Winnie, do you have any final remarks from this book review?
Yes, I just posted something in the chat where Kristen said that she doesn't think she was really supported by other women. She didn't get any particular support, and that's really the example you were talking about, that some of the women have been actually supported by men. We saw a case where a man said, before you choose me, you must ensure that that lady is also elected, and then you can go on to vote for me. So there have been actually, we have an opportunity also for fellow men to push us forward and to support us. So Christine was saying that not many women have supported her, but she doesn't blame them, because they are also having so much to deal with, raising their children, struggling with their spouses. Look.
Sorry, I think Winnie has gone off. Yeah, so the final remark on page 300 is a question that we always ask ourselves: can someone else do it? Can someone else do it? If it's talking about sexism, can someone else do it? And in this book, we are encouraged that it is us, you and I, to do it through our voices, through the spaces that we are given, the leadership roles that we hold, whether on our board, whether in office, whether as a middle manager, whatever role that you're given, don't ask, can someone else do it? We need to be able to step up and do it ourselves. Yeah, thank you. Anyone in the audience who want to say something before we close?
I had put something in the chat. Thanks so much to you, Claire, to you, Winnie, to everyone who has stayed on. You actually have people who have stayed on throughout. Amazing. I really appreciate this whole platform because you brought back the love of books into our lives. But I just want to stand, I've posted a bit in the chat. These stories are powerful because they show us we are not alone. Like for me, who has been working 20, 25 years, and at a place in my career where I'm questioning at times, you start questioning yourself, what am I doing? How can I do better? Reading these stories of these powerful women who you see, they seem all put together. When you actually read through what they have gone through and that the survival mechanisms they have developed, but not only just survival, the things they have done to thrive and shine, it actually empowers. It's very empowering. It's connecting. You feel you're one of them, you know, you're also following in their footsteps. And so we too owe it as a duty to the rest behind us. We can either tell our stories, we can write them, we can narrate them, but likewise, we are shaping stories of so many girls and women. Yesterday, I got a note from a girl 2 years ago, 1.5 years ago, in the heart of COVID, she was about to commit suicide. And I spoke at one of the cohorts, and she was about to commit. She actually told me, right now where I am, I'm just about to do it. And yesterday she sent me a message and she said, you don't know what you are doing. A safe space for girls to share, you know, because we don't have these spaces where we can honestly talk about the challenges we are facing in our professional lives, especially. And of course, professional is so intersectioned with family and with everything in our lives. So sisters, the way we've had these stories, I encourage all of us, this is my call to action. I never finish without a call to action. I encourage all of us, like Claire and the team have done in putting up this book club, we can also share our stories by writing. We can continue to share these stories, read, you know, first of all, to empower ourselves, but also to share our own stories, because each and everyone, and I've looked at all the names, each and everyone on this call today, you have a powerful story to share. We may not be yet in a position to write. We have a writers club, but at least you can share it, you can narrate it, you can mentor, you can, in any way, you can share little tidbits that help another girl and another woman to navigate a very difficult space in their career, or to shine even better. As that lady has said, it's not that they didn't block me, but the fact that they did not go out of their way to help me was almost as bad, you know? So thank you, sisters. Blessings. I love this. I'm so glad that I was able to join in. Even when I'm not with you, trust me that I support you 110 and 120%. Blessings.
Thank you so much, Alan. Thank you. Thank you all the ladies for staying on. I encourage you to go to the book club and read the book. There's a copy there for you, a soft copy. In this month, we are reading another great, amazing book of persistence, The Power of One More. I've already started reading the book. It's a great book. I encourage you to read it. We shall be reviewing it on the first Friday of the next month. Read it. It talks about one more when you're about to give up. Just one more phone call, one more application, one more. So read it. It's a very good book. There are many nuggets there. Yes. Thank you so much. God bless you and have a lovely, lovely weekend.
Thank you, Claire.
Thank you. And
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye. Thank you
Good
for
night.
joining.
Thank you for
Bye-bye.
joining.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.